Blood Time, the podcast that speaks to the bond, the emotion between coach and athlete at the interscholastic and intercollegiate level. Each interview, each segment will reveal that bond and what was learned, how they were transformed, and what each athlete took to the world at large from that transformation. These stories will warm your heart and astound you altogether. Submitted for your approval. Now it is Blood Time. Welcome to Blood Time. This is Coach CIMORONI. This is going to be one of my favorite interviews. Last interview, what an amazing man. Frank Romano, the legend, coach at Notre Dame College, Kent State University, Maple Heights, Kenston, Elyria. Incredible story. An amazing guy because he doesn't know social media. He doesn't even have an email. He doesn't even know how to, he can text, sort of. He has gotten the most hits on our social media. On my LinkedIn, he's over 2,000 views. It's crazy. Wow. I love you, Frank. You were great. Wonderful stories. You're a detailed guy. But I want to also talk about one thing. He referred to a term called the OW. For those not in the wrestling community, that meant outstanding wrestler in the tournament. So I just wanted to, a little notation there if you're back listening to the Romano interview. Today, this interview is the penultimate interview of our entire history. And the reason I am doing this is because of this man. He is my wrestling father. He's the wrestling godfather to so many. The wrestling grandfather now, as we matriculate through life. Coach Domenick Iammarino, the history of Beechwood. How are you, Coach?
Doing very well, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
I don't know how to take all these accolades.
Just
already.
Keep taking it, okay? Because I'm going to give you more.
Getting back to Frank, I'm sorry
well,
to interrupt on this.
He's
one of my good buddies.
Yeah.
And we went to dinner one day last week, and you're right.
Well, it has to be Italian food.
I couldn't text them.
Of course.
I had to call them.
Right.
You know, everybody texts, but not Frank.
No.
I mean, I'm not the ultimate
he does
guy
not
either.
Email
But
his girlfriend, you have to send it to his
I
girlfriend's
believe it
email.
all.
It's beautiful.
Frank, I believe it all.
But, it's amazing how many people he's affected.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? And that's obviously part of that's pretty much the main reason I want you in here today is how many people you have affected and the ripple effect of Blood Time. Blood Time is about that bond, that connection, and you made that connection with me back in the early 70s. Now think about that. I was talking to my wrestling team the other day, and Coach Goodwin, who's my assistant coach, goes, listen to this guy. He's been around the sport for 41 years. What's the matter with you as a coach? And almost 50 years as a wrestler. And I said, shut up. It's like crazy when you start thinking of those numbers.
Right.
And I know a few years ago, you celebrated 50 years coaching.
I did. And actually, I'm up to 55.
God bless you, man. That's fantastic.
Consecutive years coaching some wrestling team somewhere.
And it's amazing. You 31 years as the head coach at Beechwood in two separate reigns, if you will. Right?
You got it. Actually, I thought it was 30. Maybe you're right.
Well, I know you did 19 the first time.
19.
Okay, and then the second time, I think it was
11 or 12. Yeah,
okay,
you're
so,
right.
All right,
you're
30
right.
or 31 years. Yeah. That's fantastic. But how many people you have affected? But getting back to my initial comment about why I'm doing this podcast, the reason for this podcast is that the stories are incredible. I'm going to even use the term magnificent about what has been done in the real world with the lessons learned either on the wrestling mat, football field. I'm going to have we're lucky enough, our next interview after you is Bob France. Bob France is obviously a radio host. Amazing story. He's a football player. We're going to do more of these other types of athletes, but the bond, the transformation of those young men and young women, hopefully we'll get some women on soon, that then transform them into the person that they are today and what they've done with that. You have seen so many guys from the early or mid-'60s, right?
Mid-'60s, right.
To now, the transformation of our society. So you're really literally a walking compendium of what we are today and where we've come from. So where did you come from? Tell me where you came from.
Well, I myself came from Cleveland, Collinwood area.
Oh, story.
Grew up in Collinwood.
5 points, right?
5 points, which, by the way, as you may have seen in the news, the school may close.
Yeah.
Very hard to take, being from that area
Yeah.
and going to the school. Well, I was at Collinwood High School, and I believe it or not, I played basketball.
You were a pretty good basketball player.
5'4", whatever.
But you were vertically challenged.
Yes. But I could shoot.
So many of us are.
So anyway, I played basketball right up to junior year.
Okay.
And my senior year, starting, the guidance counselor, I still remember his name, Harry Kester.
Okay.
He was the coach previously at John Hay and Cleveland West, which at those times were big time high school wrestling.
Well, sure, the Senate League.
The
right?
Senate. Yeah. He said to me once, "Why don't you go out for wrestling?" I said, "Well, I play basketball."
Right.
He said, "Listen, let's be honest. You're going to catch some splinters.
Right.
Why don't you go out for wrestling?"
Right.
He said, "You seem like a pretty tough kid."
Sure.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
I took him.
And that was really the only reference you had to have back in the day.
Right.
You were a tough kid, and
you're
there's
right.
a lot of tough kids out there that you pulled off. And
so 1 year high school wrestling wasn't enough. I did actually pretty well for 1 year.
Okay.
And lost. We all have stories.
Right.
So my first 3 matches I won easily, and I thought, this is easy.
That's right.
This is easy, but it wasn't.
No.
And I remember, though, my 4th high school match, I wrestled the state champion from John Marshall.
Sure.
His name was Russ DeSanto.
Okay.
And he beat me 6'5".
Wow.
And I almost had him pinned. The old story, every wrestler talks like that, but I did.
Yeah.
He beat me, and I ran into him 10 years later at some wedding. He said, "You pinned me." So you remember all these things.
Oh my God.
The stories that you say.
Absolutely.
The stories.
The stories, right.
I actually almost made state.
Okay.
Lost by point to make it.
Back then it was an invitational though, wasn't it?
No.
Because it was in the 50s.
It was earlier.
Yeah, it was in the 50s.
But my year, you had to qualify. And I got to the final match, lost to a kid from, I still remember names and scores.
So you lost the blood round.
I did, 4-3.
Wow, yeah.
That kid took third. He was from Cleveland Heights.
Gotcha.
Eugene Rosewater.
Oh, sure, yeah. My Uncle Lenny knew him.
I'm sure. I'm sure he did.
Mm-hmm. So then that motivates you to go to Kent State, right?
Yes.
You then become the captain of the team there?
Well, I did.
Right. Okay.
Co-captain.
Okay.
And I did pretty well. Again, another story. My senior year, I was one of the co-captains, and I thought I could be an All-American, but I fractured a vertebrae in my neck.
Oh, man.
Mid-season, doctor said, "You look at this X-ray, you go a little further, you could be paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
So you're done."
Yeah.
So I was 21, 22 years old, and I was done.
Yeah. And then it motivated you to do what?
It did.
Yeah, it motivated you to go into coaching, right?
It did, but again, not immediately.
Okay.
I graduated from Kent with a business degree, but I was not in education.
Gotcha.
And I got married 3 months or so after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is very typical for that generation, your generation, right?
22 years old.
Sure, yeah. My father was 21.
First baby came within a year.
Right.
Typical again.
Yep.
And I thought I wanted to teach and coach.
Okay.
So I was working at a support. I went to John Carroll Night School.
All right.
I could only take 1 class at a time because I was working.
Sure.
Second year, another baby came.
Oh, boy.
So I had to work to make money.
No. They didn't have family planning back then, right?
No.
Exactly.
So it took me about 2.5, 3 years to get those courses to teach.
Sure. Yeah. But little by little, right? Trust the process.
Now, if you want to go on with my story on this one?
Sure.
So I had a job at Reliance Electric.
Okay.
A young guy out of school working in the office in the factory, a little office in a factory.
Right.
I used to assign jobs to those older guys. Older means 45, 50, which today are kids.
Yep.
And I used to give them their jobs, and they used to get on me. You know, they worked incentive.
Okay.
So they would say, "I don't want that job, kid."
Right.
And of course, I learned to fight back with
Sure.
these guys, these hard-nosed factory guys.
Sure.
It was fantastic to have that experience.
Oh, yeah.
And I learned to fight back with them. No, this is what you're getting, man.
Right.
Don't tell me you can't.
You had to be directional.
It helped.
Absolutely.
It helped me.
It's kind of like when you had to kind of get in Mike Milkovich's face when he called you a ham and egger.
Oh, we won't get to that one now. No.
That's one of the greatest stories of all time. Who were you with when he called you ham and egger?
Okay, I'm veering off on that one now. I was with Arnie Saferstein.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Now, Arnie was one of my first assistant coaches at Beechwood.
He was a maniac.
In the 60s, late 60s. And we went to watch a match at Cleveland Heights with Cleveland Heights and Maple.
Right, back in the heyday.
Maple was number one.
Right.
Cleveland Heights was very good.
Is that when Mattavino was the coach?
Mattavino was the coach.
Sure, yeah.
And they had some person who was supposed to do the time didn't show up.
Right.
And they asked us to do the clock.
Right.
So I'll help out. They showed me how to do it. Right in the middle of a match where Maple kid had the Cleveland Heights kid on his back, the buzzer went off.
Oh my God.
I had nothing to do with it.
Oh my God.
I swear till today.
Right.
I didn't do it. All of a sudden the buzzer went off. Of course the referee had to stop the match.
Yeah.
And the time was not really out.
Gotcha.
It took the Maple kid away from the pit.
That's right.
So
he
Coach Milkovich comes over to the table and he said, "No wonder you got these ham and eggers keeping score for you."
That is fantastic.
So that's what he called me.
That's right. Big Mike getting in your face. I love it. So all this gets together, right? And then now you're thinking to yourself, maybe I can coach. Maybe I can direct young men into a better life or a better opportunity.
And again, I have to go on with that story.
Sure.
So I student taught at Calumet High School, which was my home, my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there was an opening. The principal wanted me to get the job.
Okay.
Teach a business, which was my major,
right,
and coach wrestling. Right. Wow, my dream, my high school.
Yeah.
I still lived in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And he called downtown. I was in his office at the time, and he told the people at the Board of Education, "I got the young guy for the job."
All right.
And the guy downtown, he didn't even know me. He said, "I promised that to somebody else."
Wow.
I was out.
Yeah.
So I go back to Reliance Electric full time.
Okay.
I went into the placement office at John Carroll, filled out an application.
Okay.
Didn't interview, just application. Evidently, Beechwood called John Carroll.
Okay. Which happens all the time. Anyhow.
You have anybody in your files who could coach wrestling, teach?
Right.
Yeah, call this guy.
I love it.
And it was late July.
Okay.
Late July before school started, of course. Right. And I did not even look for another job. I just felt if I didn't get in my school, I don't want to do it, which was stupid.
Right.
But that's what I did.
Yep.
Called this guy. Called me. Came for an interview.
Yep.
I lived 7 miles from Beechwood. I'd never heard of Beechwood at that time.
Sure. Yeah, it was a farm company.
It was
a farm village. I mean, when my parents built the house there, there was
nothing.
Right.
You're right.
There.
You're right.
As a matter of fact, that land that you taught at was our land.
I remember.
It's fascinating.
Got the job, 1965.
And it's amazing. You get it in 65, and then Beechwood literally explodes in the next 20 years.
Oh, the school, absolutely. The city.
And the city with all the, with all the infrastructure, all the businesses, all the corporations coming in there.
The malls came and so forth,
Amazing.
I remember when I first started Beechwood, the only business I could recall was Jolly John's.
Yep. Which is now yours truly.
By the water tower.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was no hotels.
It was a truck stop.
Nothing. It was a truck stop.
From like 3 in the morning to 3 in the
afternoon.
afternoon.
There was nothing.
That was it. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Just to look back, I've seen it all in Beechwood.
Yep. Absolutely.
I've seen it all.
Yeah. So you get in there. Your first year is what year?
Fall 1965.
Okay.
First year teaching, first year coaching. It was a new program.
Right.
They had a club the year before.
Okay.
A club.
All right.
And, I thought I knew it all.
Right.
Which, of course, I didn't. But somehow I was able to relate.
Right.
I think that's just luck of the personalities.
Sure.
I wasn't trained in any way.
Right.
It just it worked.
Right.
It worked with the Beechwood kids.
Yeah.
And Beechwood is a fantastic place. Now, when I started Beechwood, to be very honest, the school was probably 95% Jewish.
Oh, no question. I mean, my graduating class in 1975, I think we had 200 kids in my class, easily 180 Jewish.
Wonderful situation, wonderful people.
It was an amazing school.
Yeah, amazing school. And I remember some people said, why do you want to go to Beechwood? You know, those kids, they'll never. Right. But it was wrong. They were wrong.
Completely
Beechwood
wrong.
had some very tough kids because they came from tough families.
No question about it. No question. And the kids that we attracted, okay, and I was fortunate enough to be a head coach there too a couple of times, they want that.
Yep.
And they were a little different, though, than the average Beechwood student. So to some degree, the people had that viewpoint were right, but they were wrong with us. They were wrong with the wrestlers that we got, and those guys were something.
They came from backgrounds where the families fought hard in the business world.
Yep.
Some grandparents or even some parents were from the Holocaust era.
No question about it. Yeah.
Tough people survived many things.
Right.
And these kids were that way too.
No question about it. And loyal.
Yes.
Loyal. It was a beautiful. And I was fortunate enough to be your assistant coach.
Yes, you were, Peter.
In the late '70s, early '80s, which was a lot of our original golden era.
We had some top years there.
We did, and we attracted some amazing kids. So what I want to drill down into that. You know, I am your story, okay? Because I always wanted to impress you. You had the most charismatic personality of any coach by far. Maybe Max Vermillion to some degree had the same kind of loyal following, but you were different. And wrestling clearly shows that when you go into the wrestling room, which is this gorgeous wrestling room at Beechwood, and you look at the board, and also too, you also translated that into the other coaches that have taken over from your reign. The amount of people that we get down to state and place, so we get motivated kids to not only understand it but trust the process so that they peak at the right time. It's an amazing percentage of kids that go down there place.
That is true.
You know, it really is. So you had this charisma. You attracted me to it. I was not a great wrestler. I made myself into an okay wrestler, but I definitely made myself into a good coach because of what I learned from you. Tell me a little bit about some of the kids that you coached that are doing some cool things, you know, and actually transformative things in the real world, and what they mean to you as a man.
You know, I run into many of these guys, and Pete, you're one of them. Thanks. You absolutely are. I just run into everybody, and I could think Ricky Sorkin. He was a state champ,
3-time finalist.
One of the two Beechwood wrestlers who was a 3-time finalist.
Right, and took second with one leg.
Basically. He did.
Yeah.
He did.
He
big time graduate of Yale, Wall Street. One of the top people in Wall Street today.
Right.
People own the businesses. It's amazing. I run into Tommy Weiss all the time, who's done very well in the business world too. It just over and over. You just run. You see all these people. I go to Dunkin' Donuts at Solon, have my coffee, and 2-3 ex-wrestlers walk in, or parents. It just keeps going.
Sure.
And you know, I just see it. It's just I can hardly. I'm stumbling to be more specific.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
But
well, like
Michael Goldberg, one of the top lawyers.
Yeah.
Scott Peters.
Sure.
He's a doctor.
We have his wonderful first
I
one
know
right
that.
to our left.
I know that.
That's right.
When Scott was in high school, Scott, I'm complimenting you. I never thought that's a compliment.
He was. Let's just put it this: he was mischievous.
Yes, he
Very
was
charming and mischievous, but he's completely transformed.
And that's worked for him.
Absolutely.
And,
he's transformed.
He was one of those late bloomers academically.
And also
always had it,
and also physically too, right?
Yeah,
think about that,
true.
right?
That's
I mean,
true.
he was an 88-pound freshman, right?
Yeah,
you know,
that's
think
true.
about that. You know, still.
And he still blames me for losing his finals championship.
Okay.
You want me to get to that?
Of course, yeah. You got to tell the good and the bad.
Yeah, Scott's senior year, he was really outstanding. Yep. And in the sectional finals, he had to go overtime.
Okay.
With a Chanel wrestler.
Yeah.
And he came out, at that time you had like a minute break, and I got in him a bit.
Yeah.
Yelled at him, you're not putting your own, right. All that stuff. And it psyched him up, and he went on one.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So now it's the state finals.
Right.
He goes overtime.
Right.
But in the third period, he had to ride the man for 2 minutes just to tie, which he did.
Wow.
To me, that was such a tremendous feat.
Sure.
So he came out for that talk, and I was so low-key, man, you're doing fantastic. Right. Just stick with it. You did it. Yeah. He lost. Yeah. Then he blamed me for not yelling at him. He'll still bring that up.
You're right. You're wrong if you're right, and you're wrong if you're wrong, right?
Why didn't you yell at me like you did back in the sectionals? Well, okay, I'm sorry.
Why did you wrestle like the back in the sectionals? I love commercial.
Hey Blood Time listeners, this is Maverick Peters over at MV Podcasting. Just want to give a quick shout out to our dear friends at Defense Soap. They're doing an incredible job staying on top of the world crisis that is COVID-19. Check them out if you get the chance at www.defensesoap.com. Thank you.
Well, I gotta tell you, no matter what you did, he became one of the greatest assistants in the history of assistants for me.
Absolutely.
I mean, he and I would sit there and we would finish each other's sentences. We were unbelievably on the same page. And then when I retired the first time, he took it to the next level. The most proud moment up until 1994 in my life as a coach was when he won the Coach of the Year.
That's right.
I could not be
That's
more
right.
proud.
I remember we were at that meeting together.
Yep, and I was like,
you accepted for him because he was in Minnesota.
I did, and I was
at
just
the time.
I was just so proud. And that's what it is, right? The student becomes the teacher, So, and we can pass that on. This is what this whole thing is about. Right?
And that year, I was one of his assistant coaches.
Indeed, you came back for that
one year. Came back for that year, yeah.
And then you became the head coach
again. Yes,
exactly. Right. So it's interesting, right? How
really is.
How fascinating that kind of stuff is. And
I'm amazed at myself that I remember these little things, little points, but I do.
Well, that's the glue of life. That really is, And so when we think about all of that, and we think about again the echo, okay, or the ripple of your kernel, your core, your seed planted in 1971. This fat little kid comes into practice room, doesn't know wrestling from whatever. I thought it was basically big time wrestling, like an idiot. And then you literally, whether you wanted to or not, you molded me into and then I went out and coached, and then Scott went out and coached, and Goldberg goes out and do this, and Krause goes out and does that, and who knows who we're affecting. And it's interesting because we got guys that maybe were really on the wrong path and now are not only on the right path, but are on the exponential path that are just affecting people over and over again. And so,
excuse me.
Sure, please.
You mentioned Krause, Alan Krause.
Alan Krause. I just interviewed him. He's going to be our next. He's going to be our next interview.
I have to tell this about affecting people.
Sure.
Al wrestled. He did very well. He did not make state, but he was a darn good kid.
That was a really difficult thing to do to make state.
So he went away to college in Florida.
Right. Antioch.
Okay, and he was taking flying lessons.
Right.
And the story is told is he was up in a small Piper Cub, I guess you call them. Right. It went down.
Yep.
He was with 4 people, 3 and himself, and those 3 guys died. Yeah. And El survived. Yep. And he became partially paralyzed. At that time, they thought it would be more paralyzed.
Well, they told him he could never walk.
Okay, so here's part of this now. I ran into him 6 months after the accident in Corky Lenny's.
Okay.
He was in a wheelchair. His family was pushing him.
Right.
when I tell the story, I really choke up.
I understand that. He's a hero of mine.
And he said, oh, hi, coach, all that.
Yeah.
He said, I'm going to walk into your wrestling practice.
Love that.
About a year later,
Yep.
he came in with his hand walkers.
Yep.
And he walked into wrestling practice.
Amazing guy.
I mean, I really think of that. I do choke up.
Sure.
Telling that story.
Yep. And that's what this is all about.
I mean, he felt he had to do that.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah. And that's why I had to have him in here. And it's
successful lawyer today.
Successful lawyer, but in the interview he says, this does not define me. What defines me is being a father, being a husband, being an attorney, being an advocate for others. He had almost this Zen attitude about, I got this. You know what I mean? And he's still walking with the crutch,
yes.
But he's walking, and his upper body is amazing, as it always was. But he always had those big, thick legs. Remember that?
Yes.
He had some great single leg takedowns.
He said wrestling helped him survive.
Yes.
When he was in that airplane for a couple hours before rescue.
Right.
He said the discipline he learned from wrestling mentally, it really helped him to survive.
Yes. And Coach,
so I hear those stories and know those stories, and it's worth it.
And it is. And you're a strong man by that leadership. And it kind of leads me into a thing that's clearly has defined you over the last 7 years. And we talked about this off air. And I'm going to bring this up. Your beautiful grandson, Daniel,
right,
was literally executed in 2012.
Right.
By a very ill man, young man.
Right in the Chardon High School cafeteria.
High School. And I want to honor him. I want to honor his parents, and I want to honor you. But I know that transformed you. How did that transform you, and how did you deal with that as the leader of your family, the patriarch of your family? And what does that mean to you today?
Wow. Well, obviously that was the worst day of my life.
Of course.
And if I could go back, it was on a Monday morning.
Right.
Dan was in 11th grade, Chardon High School. Danny Parmenter, my daughter's son. And I had the flu that day.
Okay.
I hardly ever missed school.
Right.
I stayed home.
Okay.
Because I really had the flu.
Yeah.
Well, it was clearing up. I was better than I was on that previous weekend. But I was out.
Yeah.
And I recall I went by myself to get a coffee at McDonald's.
Okay.
After about 8:30 in the morning. And my wife called me. Now, my wife is not Danny's grandma.
Right.
But she called me because she got the call about the shooting.
Yeah.
And she said, come home immediately. I mean, I didn't want to ask questions because I knew obviously there's something going.
Right.
I thought one of my 90-year-old aunts passed away.
Right.
Never dreamed of this. And she told me Danny was shot in the cafeteria. It was on the news on TV. Now, I hadn't seen TV. I was having my coffee at McDonald's. So then she had the TV off, actually. So I wouldn't walk in and see it.
Yeah.
So then we put it back on. And then I got the call about an hour later that he had passed away.
Right.
Had passed away at Metro.
Yeah.
To go to their home that afternoon in Chardon, my daughter and her husband, Bob, was the worst scene of my life. To see the sadness, the people in the home. There had to be 50, 60 people there.
Oh, it had to be just
consoling them.
Desperate situation.
And it was
almost surreal, right?
Absolutely almost surreal.
Yeah.
And I relate a little in time periods. I relate a little bit to wrestling,
Of course.
because that was state tournament week,
Right.
and I'm pleading not putting it in any perspective of anything near the same, but it just for my time period.
Right. Yeah.
And Danny grew up with Anthony Tutelo.
Oh, sure, yeah.
For those who don't know, Anthony Tutelo grew up with Danny when they were kids in Willowick.
Right.
And then my family moved to Chardon. Anthony that weekend made state.
Yeah.
Wrestling for Lake Catholic.
Right.
And he made state. That Monday morning or afternoon, by that time, he was in the home with his parents, who are good friends of my daughter and her husband.
Right.
And he was really shook up.
Of course.
And he said, I don't even want to go to state.
Right.
Of course, came to senses and talked to him a little bit that day. Yeah, absolutely, you have to go to state. Sure. You have to do it. You have to do it for Danny, your friend.
Yeah.
And actually, at the funeral, Danny's funeral, which was on a Saturday morning
at Montreal.
That was the visitation.
That was the visitation.
The funeral was in the church in Chardon.
That was an amazing scene of love
really.
There.
Anthony was in Columbus for the state tournament.
Sure.
He left a letter to be read that morning at the funeral.
How beautiful.
And I did read it.
That's a kid.
He gave it to my son-in-law Bob.
Sure.
Bob couldn't do it. So he asked me. I wasn't prepared. I never even looked at it.
Right.
And there were probably 1,000 people in church. And I did read it.
Yeah.
And it's a memory again that from that day.
That's a raised right young man.
Yeah, he's an outstanding young man.
Well. Yeah.
And, so, and then a lot of former wrestlers were condolences and showed and came and cried. It's just part of the family.
Yeah. Well, I was part of that.
You were.
And I'll never forget, right in the foyer there, had to be 50 former Beechwood wrestlers.
That's true.
And you're in the middle, and we're all just, it was just it was like a mosh pit of love. That's the only way I could think about it. And I don't know what, as a father, I can't imagine what you said to your daughter, how you consoled her, whatever. And I don't want you to share that today.
It's just,
that's your thing. But what I will tell you is that, they say, and I don't know if I believe this or not, that you only get what you can handle, but clearly you're a strong man.
Well, again, maybe so, but I lost a grandson, and it's tough. But I can't even imagine how much tougher it is for my daughter and Bob.
Yeah.
Grandparents, of course, it's tough, but it's tougher, and they are doing very well dealing with life.
Well, I want
you
to
very well.
I want you to let them know from me, and I'm going to ask for my blood time family to send you as much love as possible.
Well, thank you.
Because this is something that is the worst that can ever happen to a family.
Absolutely,
no question about it.
And I'm going to make sure they listen to this.
Please.
So they could hear us talking about their curves and their.
And it's Dina and Bob, correct?
Dina and Bob,
Dina
yes.
and Bob, we send you love. Send love to you and your family. Coach, I would love to talk a little bit more about that, but I think you've really nailed it.
Thank you.
And want you to know that the transformation that has occurred through the entire, family, nation, whatever terminology you want to use, that you created is amazing. It is expansive. It's crazy how big it is, because a guy like Jason Thomas, who I interviewed, okay, you never coached.
No, I was in the room, but I was not the head coach. You and Scott were.
Maybe 1 year. So, but this guy is affecting an entire company down in Fort Bliss.
Yeah.
Michael Goldberg told the story about how the room got him ready for his autistic son Noah.
It's true.
And he used the analogy that wrestling got him ready for climbing Mount Everest every day and never reaching the top.
Wow.
Think about that. So, and there's story after story after story.
I can't conceive of all this as much as you're making it sound.
I know.
I know I've helped kids. I know, but I can't perceive as many.
I understand that, but you know what? It's amazing because sometimes I got an email from Jacob Markovich. Remember Jacob?
Yes.
Jacob Markovich is
little guy.
was just such a goofball. God,
Yes.
I love the kid.
Yeah.
But he was a goof, and he just didn't have his act together.
Right.
And I would not allow him to get off the hook. That was my first year as head coach, and we had a terrible team.
I remember.
Back in 14 through 17, the second tour duty, and I get emails from him every holiday thanking me.
So you affect too.
Well,
Pete.
because of you. This is what I'm saying. I know that you may not want to hear this, but that's really what this is all about. And so why I wanted you in here today, and I could go on and on and on, but I really wanted to get to the core of this, to say that you created this, and you're still creating it because you're at the middle school. And I know that that's a tough thing right now.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing, It's a slugfest. But you're still doing it every day. And that's an amazing thing. You want to share your age?
I'm 79 now.
God bless you.
And I'm still going. I think a lot of I
And
feel
you look better than Frankie Avalon.
I'm healthy. I'm healthy. Yeah, when I was a kid, that was my era.
Yeah, Frankie
The
Avalon.
girls called me Frankie. You made it the truth.
I know.
I'm not sure if it was for Frankie Valley or Frankie Avalon.
You'll take either one, right? Frankie Valley's got a better
Some of the
career.
young people don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, 4 seasons.
But yeah, I'm 79, as you said, and I'm lucky that I'm healthy.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm healthy. Right now, I feel healthy.
Right.
A lot of that, I think, is lucky genetics.
Yeah, right.
But I take care of myself.
Yeah, you do.
So it goes both
I mean,
ways.
you're thin.
Yeah, and
right?
I kind of eat what I want,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm lucky.
And you're active.
Mom and Dad, lucky.
Right. And you have a glass of red wine once in a while.
Oh
right?
yeah,
It's
but
good.
only one.
I
Only
got you.
one, people.
I understand that. That's the discipline. Well, it's interesting too because people ask me why you're going to continue. Well, yesterday I almost passed out, yelling.
Oh, at the tournament.
Yelling in the tournament. So I said, as long as I don't pass out, I'm good. You know what I mean? But having said all that, we honor you and we thank you for doing what you've done over the years. We wish you continued health and continued success as you coach and pass these lessons along. So before I wrap up this interview, and again, I would love to talk to you for hours and hours and hours, particularly I remember when I took over the head coaching position at Beechwood in '87, you told me I was an idiot.
Yes, I remember that.
In your backyard on your
you
kitchen table.
came to my yard in South Euclid at the time,
Yeah.
and you were coaching with me at Brush,
Right.
and we were making good strides.
Yes, we were.
And you said, you're going to go back to Beechwood.
With
Well,
one
Beechwood had one wrestler.
That's
And I said, Pete, you're crazy. Stick
Yeah.
with us.
right.
We're doing well. We're getting pretty good here.
Right.
And you were right. You built it back up with the help of Scott, basically.
Yeah, but your help too.
Michael came in.
Your help too.
My help.
Well, you gave me advice.
Well,
after you told me I was crazy, you gave me advice when I talked to you about it. It
And
was
I
cool.
recall one other thing about you and Scott in coaching.
What's that?
I coached 1 year at Orange,
Right.
and my dual meet record against Beechwood is 0-1.
Okay.
We had a dual meet at Beechwood, and you guys won.
Yeah, that's right.
Darn it, I still think of that day.
I beat you and Gibbons as a head coach.
Wow.
And I was the first guy to beat
Gee,
Richmond
Gibbons.
Heights. Richmond Heights in a dual meet, but now it wasn't Paporis. So I never beat Paporis. but-
Paporis, you know what? Me neither.
Yeah.
And I
He was amazing.
compliment him and his family. He's passed away. He's a wonderful man.
Head coach at Richmond Heights.
My teams, we had some darn good teams.
Yes, you did.
We were 11-1 in dual meets, 12-1. Never beat Richmond Heights. Now, after he left,
Yeah.
we did.
Yep. No question
But
about it.
and that's a compliment to him because he was an outstanding coach, outstanding person.
No question about it. Yeah.
And somebody this morning, when I was having coffee,
Yeah.
I told him about the podcast.
Yes.
And my friend said, "Are you going to mention you never beat Richmond Heights?" And I said, "Probably not, but I owe it to him in his passing now that me as a head coach, I never beat him."
It was an incredible rivalry.
And we had
It
some
was
fantastic
matches.
Standing
full
room
houses.
only.
It was crazy.
Tommy
Yeah.
Weiss's father got
Yeah.
thrown out of the gym
with his brothers.
his brothers.
Gene
But,
and Lenny.
but we lost.
Absolutely.
We lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because the rivalries, right? I don't know if they're there anymore because of no dual meets,
Right.
and that could be a whole nother podcast, and I don't want to get into that. But I want to wrap this up, Coach. If you could leave us with just a thought or two of what you'd like to leave to the podcast world that listens to this, I would love to.
Well, number one, thank you for having me.
Sure.
And I think it's wonderful that you're bringing the wrestling community into this.
Thank you.
People have to get to know more about the wrestling community.
I agree.
And it's, as you said, as we pointed out today, it's such a close-knit blood time community.
Yes.
We're all from the same wrestling blood.
Yes, we are.
And it's people don't get it.
No.
And I hope some people get it from our conversation and what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Coach Domenick Iammarino.
Thank you.
Hall of Famer in so many places.
I'm wearing my ring today.
I love it. The Hall of Fame, National Hall of Fame, right?
No, not national.
Ohio Wrestling.
Just Ohio.
Ohio Wrestling
Just
Hall of Fame.
Ohio.
Okay, but also Collinwood Hall of Fame, right?
That's true.
So
true.
there's plenty of Hall of Fames.
Well, thank you.
But thank you so much for coming in. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue good health to you and your entire family.
Thank you.
My love to you. Thank you so much for being that coach
Thanks again.
to me and my wrestling father. We are blood. This is Blood Time with Coach Cimaroni.